Hey guys, it is your girl Najwa. Welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad you're here. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about the fact, a little bit about my thoughts on Donald Trump's indictment. I've been dancing like all week, all weekend. I'm so happy. No, I mean, I don't want to seem crass and I don't want to seem insensitive. I know that there are many people out there who genuinely support Donald Trump, who genuinely think that he is a person of value, and I get it. And you know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that these people have experienced disappointment, but this is a guy who has been scaring women, people of color, people of a different religion outside of Christianity, immigrants. I mean, a lot of people for a very, very long time, because he has threatened democracy. He has threatened democracy and civil rights that people have fought for decades, for centuries even. But I think, so I took a few notes here. I think people are waking up. Now, one, I think that Trump's indictment, and I'm going to talk about this a bit more in detail as we go on, but first I just kind of want to put my high level out there. I think people are waking up, and the proof of that is Donald Trump's indictment and King Charles's bemoaned coronation. People aren't looking forward to that coronation. So I want to talk about why this is. So first of all, we can't talk about this without talking about anti-racism. So anti-racism is a long run game, you know, and something came out just before we get into Donald Trump's indictment and my thoughts on that. You know that I am a huge supporter of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. They experienced institutional racism in the UK. They called it out, you know, and they have been absolutely abused, harassed for years for doing that. And seemingly no senior royals, the system of that monarchy in Britain itself, and the political face, the prime ministerial cabinet in the UK itself, has not really shown, you know, with continued concerted efforts, shown that they are taking up anti-racist initiatives, that they are taking up anti-misogynistic, anti-xenophobic initiatives to really say, not only to Meghan Markle, to Prince Harry, but to people like them who have experienced that type of presidents. They haven't taken up that cross to say, we heard you, and this is going to be a continued effort that we're going to keep working towards because we believe in it. People haven't gotten that. People have gotten silence, and they've seen that Harry and Meghan have been attacked as a big cover-up, okay? And, yeah, I think that, okay, so that was the thing. Prince William basically came out, and he made a statement, this was a few weeks ago, two or 3 weeks ago, that he did not condone racism in sports, you know. And I actually initially saw this on a tweet. I also saw it on a YouTube Royal channel, but since, in the past week or two, I checked out Claudia Bolin's channel. I've been actually catching up on a lot of my sussexsquad content, because I've been really busy. But I literally saw something about it on Claudia Bolin's channel, and I saw something about it way back when it first came out on Sussexsquad Family TV. And the Duchess of Success also talked about it. And where was William when Meghan Markle was trying to explain that literally the racism, the xenophobia she was experiencing in the UK was leading her to want to unalive herself? Where was he then? And where has the monarchy been when she has had constant bad press since years? When people have questioned the sanctity of the monarchy's royal bloodline because she's tainted it. where was the UK then? Where was the concerted effort to speak out against racism then? Because many people in the UK, especially huge political players, I mean, they want to say that the monarchy is not political, but you see that they sit down and break bread with people from corrupt tabloid media. You see that the monarchy has been afforded privileges of documentation, of insight into political movements when they're supposed to be sort of objective and all of that. What happened then? I don't understand it. Because people, big political players in the UK, have essentially been complicit in all of this. They've been complicit, and they basically said the United Kingdom isn't a racist place. That right there automatically says you are not an anti-racist. You know, my experience really living in an extended period of time in different countries has been in the US, my country of birth, and France, where I've lived for 5 years, and the UK, where I lived for 6 months. And I guarantee you, from experience, all of those places have racism. And if you cannot understand that racism is not always overt, like Claudia Boleyn has a great video about Prince William if you want to delve deeper into that. I really want to focus more on Trump's indictment. But just really quick, I had to talk on this. The reason people are really not looking forward to this coronation is because they see hypocrisy. I've said many times, I really don't have a problem with constitutional monarchy because it's prevailed so long in the United Kingdom and in the Commonwealth countries, and I feel like it is deeply entrenched in their way of life, deeply entrenched in their history, but it needs to be transformed just the same way that gun laws in the United States need to be transformed. Yes, the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, great, okay? But people are dying. Kids are dying, you know? And there's a lot more concentration in cities than there were in 1776, you know? People don't live all the way out in rural, you know, the majority of people don't live out in big rural areas where they got to defend themselves from bears and you know, things like that from rogue soldiers, from pirates. No, I mean, people are walking up into schools and shooting children. And still conservatives in the U.S. don't want to let this go. And it's not even that the country is asking them to let it go. The country is just asking for reform. At least on the left. Can we not just try and talk about it and come to some consensus? But they don't want to do that because that would mean admitting there is a problem. And the same thing with racism. So the UK, there's you know, Brexit, the experiences of Brexit are being heavily experienced by the most vulnerable people of society, the poor, people of color, immigrants, women, and still the UK really will just not make a concerted effort or even admit that the UK has racism in its country. And the result? Not my king, not my king, not my king, not my king. So I just had to, people are waking up. People are waking up in the US and the UK. In the UK, it is manifesting itself in a lack of support for the monarchy. If you guys want to keep the monarchy, move with the times, okay? One surefire way to drown, and that when a tide is changing, is to dig your heels into the sand. That is not going to protect you. That is going to get you swept up by the current, and you will drown. In the U.S., you know, I'm so happy about Trump's indictment. You go, I like I said, I really don't want to be crass. I don't want to be insensitive towards those people who really support him. But as I said, you know, I don't think that presidents like Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, I don't necessarily think that those were the most emotionally intelligent presidents in the world. They were all Republican, if you hadn't got the connection yet. I don't necessarily think they were the most emotionally intelligent presidents in the world. And many of them, they lived in a time where racism and xenophobia and misogyny was just a given. But I do think in comparison to Donald Trump, these people were actual politicians. I mean, they actually committed their lives to studying. But a quick look at Ron DeSantis, and you see that, I think that Ron DeSantis would be better in office than Donald Trump, but you also see that even he is a very learned person, a person who attended, I think, Harvard Law School it was. You're still not seeing that emotional intelligence. The word woke, which literally is coming from a time where black people were being hung for looking at white women, or just existing, just breathing. And the word woke sort of prevailing throughout black media as the roots of the word. The word has changed and morphed and taken a different form on today, but to stay woke, to protect yourself and not get yourself killed by the corruption that exists out there, for someone to use that as the major part of their platform, now, I'm going to counter this woke culture, that doesn't strike me as someone who is extremely emotionally intelligent. What I can at least say for George Washington, George W. Bush, Abraham Lincoln, and Ronald Reagan, and again, you have to take into consideration the times that they lived in. Things were different. We should be better today, but at least those presidents, it's like Bill Maher said, at one point, we had our old-fashioned conservative, our old-fashioned Republicans who had their values, who wanted a minimized role of government, who wanted lower taxes, okay, who wanted an emphasis of faith-based approaches in our schools. Okay, but they could at least respect another perspective. They could at least hear another perspective. That didn't happen with Donald Trump. This is the person who said death and destruction will come if I'm incarcerated. This is the person who was such a sore loser and not winning his presidency that he tried to overthrow. He incited hate that threatened to overthrow the seat of our country's democracy. Now, I live in France, but I still have American citizenship. Okay? I have French residence, and I am truly French at heart, but America is my first love, and it always will be. My kids will proudly know that of their American heritage and their Black American heritage. But this man literally threatened all of that. For so long, as someone who's traveled a lot, and who traveled, honestly, a bit before Trump and a bit after. Well, much more after, because I'm only 31, but a bit before and a lot more after. Seeing the reception of Americans in other areas or around foreign people, pre-Donald Trump and post-Donald Trump, is vast. It's vast. I mean, this man has not only threatened democracy on a national level, but on a diplomatic level. And that mentality, this closed mentality, has reverberated throughout the world. More and more Karen behavior pops up. And yes, it might look comical as something we can laugh at on social media, but it's serious. It's serious. I get it. Even in the Black community, there's an overwhelming sense of pride and fear that comes around when, with every generation, you see that people are less and less Black, that people are more and more tan. That exists in the Black community too. Right now, in the white community, it's being wielded, used against the public to incite hatred, to incite violence that could threaten to overthrow one of the best democracies on this planet. People are waking up to that. Republicans are waking up to that. Donorship is falling. Right. So, you know what? We've just got to start listening to each other again. That's essentially what this comes to. You know, Republicans are listening to that because donorship is following. When he incited hate the way that he did during the 2021 January 6th insurrection, he did not get nearly as much of a reaction out of those people who stormed the Capitol, because they don't want to go to jail for this guy. He's clearly a rogue now, and people are waking up to that. When he actually got indicted the other day, 2 people showed up to Trump Tower to support him. 2. I heard that on David Pakman's show. 2 people. People are waking up, you know, and I get it. It's sad to watch someone that you supported sort of being pushed by the wayside. I get that. But what comes with diplomacy? What comes with tolerance and great leadership? You know, even you don't necessarily have to be a politician to be a leader. You as a voting American citizen are a leader. You lead by example by showing, I want to consider all perspectives. And all perspectives are not with Donald Trump right now. People have been living in fear, anxiety, and torment for 7 years. Leadership is leading by example. American voters have that leadership in their hand. Lead by example. And that's happening. That's happening in the US, and it's happening in the UK. More people on the left and on the right are starting to hear it. They're starting to hear it. They heard those terms anti-racist. They heard those terms emotional intelligence. They heard those terms woke. They heard those terms culture wars, and it made them angry. It made them offended, and it made them uncomfortable. It caused fear in them, as it's caused fear in people like myself, people with the same skin color as me, people with the same gender as me. It's caused us fear as well. But yet we still have to fight that good fight. People are waking up to that. They're waking up to that. And I just want to emphasize that I mean, I'm a centrist. I really don't vilify the right. You know, the right is, okay, whatever, that's fine. If you claim yourself to be a Democrat or if you claim yourself to be Republican, that is a part of American democracy, and that is your right. But at the end of the day, your leadership relies on you not only voting for yourself, not only voting for those policies that benefit you, not only advocating for those causes that benefit you, but that benefit your neighbor, and that benefit the neighbor on your other side, that benefit the Indian shopkeeper, the black female bus driver, the Asian convenience store owner, the single white mom, the white family that lives down in the trailer park, the Hispanic family that's second generation immigrants who worked their ass off to get those jobs you say they stole. For normal white Americans, black Americans, Hispanic Americans, Irish Americans, for women, for kids. That's democracy. I just don't understand it. But I think that people are waking up. I think the feign and support for Donald Trump and the lack of violence and that's so far. It could still come. But I think that shows that we have a little bit of hope. Yes. Now, very quickly, before I wrap up, I wanted to talk about something that I researched a little bit. And this idea of collectivism versus individualism. I did a lot of research. I did a lot of looking around on the internet, and I came across some really fun things. I actually kind of want to go to the library and get some books on this because it's quite interesting. So for those of you who don't know, and I'm not going to go into all of this, at some point I want to do a video that does a little bit more of an in-depth look at this. Collectivism is the idea of advancement of society, advancement of political and societal economic causes through collaboration. Is the ideal of that. Collaboration in society should happen, and it should happen amongst many peoples containing an effort together to accomplish something. Whereas, what individualism is. I mean, individualism is a new thing that has filled a lot of self-help books, and it's a positive thing. I don't deny that it's a positive thing. But in the ideology of individualism, it really is about being self-servant. Is about working on things on your own and not accepting the help of others. It's about really relying on yourself and being independent. And if you look at a lot of traditions, and I don't want to get in trouble for this because I really want to figure out the way to say this correctly and not sound uninformed or crass or offensive. But if you look at many Latin American, African, Eastern European traditions, and some Asian, it comes from the ideals of collectivism. Many of the foundations of it come from collectivism. Even that old African, think of that old African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. But for many Western European countries, and what you see stemming in Middle America right now is really based upon individualism. And as much as you might think that the insurrection on January 6th was an act of collectivism, it wasn't. Everybody there was kind of doing their own thing. Just it all translated into this level of violence and sort of just what's the word that I'm looking for? It's not sporadic. It's not absurdity, but sort of lack of focus, if that's what you want to say. There was a lack of focus, and there was just a violent energy in that entire incident. Actually, one of the articles that I read about collectivism versus individualism, I don't know if it was a pro-male site, or I don't know if it was more like a site trying to talk about some of the clear challenges that white men, I know this sounds so crazy, but the site, I'm going to find it and I'm going to do a video really, really deep diving into this. But the site was a nonprofit organization, and it basically was a site devoted to mental health and well-being and education of white men. That's what it sounded like. But this article that I read on it had a really interesting fact, and it talked about the fact, or not necessarily a fact, but the idea that from these roots of collectivism versus individualism, and many white men, and the patriarchy that has come, the privilege that's come with being white men, has really stemmed in this day and age from an individualism and a rejection of collectivism. I think that it's been a dynamic for centuries. I mean, for a very, very long time, the Western European world has basically colonized the entire world. Now, if you want to go back millennia, okay, Africa colonized the world, okay? Even Africa colonized the world. But if you want to go back in the recent 500 years, the past few centuries, it was basically Western Europe that colonized the world. And I feel deeply in my soul And my woke white friends, again saying that word woke because we're taking it back, my woke white friends will argue just as much that this white privileged, patriarchal, misogynistic, racist sort of ideal is deeply entrenched in so much that we do. And that essentially white men have been the boss, the global boss for a very, very long time. And when you look at the ideologies of collectivism versus individualism, you know, the article basically, I'm not going to link it yet because I'm going to save it for when I do a video. So just bear with my terrible synopsis of it for now. But the article basically said an example of this is that trope or that stereotype that men don't like to pull over for directions. Being married to a white man, it's very, very true. But also having grown up with 3 brothers, it's very, very true. Like, men just generally don't like to pull over for directions. But it goes deeper than that. It's like that idea of like, I would rather fail and get it wrong and, you know, solve it through trial and error than seek out help outside of myself. And I even see that with my husband, who's white, who's Portuguese, and the man will not follow a recipe. He's like, baby, I want to make some cookies. I'm like, okay, great. I've got a great recipe for some peanut butter chocolate chip cookies, or I got a great recipe for some double chocolate cookies. He's like, no, I'm just gonna wing it. And I'm like, what? And his cookies turn out terrible. And he'll still eat them because he's just that stubborn. He'll still eat them. And I'm like, you know, and the next time I'll make the cookies, he's like, babe, the cookies are really, really good. And I'm like, yep, I just followed a recipe. But it's something deeply, deeply, deeply genetically entrenched within the white race. And you see that from all of the Karen kin energy that's popped up as Donald Trump has brought this nasty energy into the world. Collectivism, I mean, I believe that collectivism is going to be the conduit that absolutely pushes society forward. I truly don't think that it just takes a village to raise a child. I think that it takes a village to accomplish democracy, to make us better, to open up our lines of communication, to enrich in our lives, our perspectives. I mean, and maybe that comes from a creative background. I mean, I work in advertising and marketing, so I work with writers and designers and strategists and account managers, and these beautiful things that started as basically a Word document, these beautiful things come to life. You know, I went to an art school, and we would sometimes do projects. I think back to my 2D design. You know, I had a 2-dimensional design class. This really cool professor. She was an older woman. She had gray hair. She dressed like a beatnik. And we would have to do these projects where we'd have to build or construct things together and paint it and sculpt it. And it's true, things would turn out so much more interesting. I won't always say better, but often things would turn out in a way that you would never have arrived at if you would have just done it on your own. Things in the world, scientific advancements, music, art, creativity, literature, the expansion of black and brown peoples, the liberation of black and brown peoples in Western society, history, government, so many things center around collectivism. It is truly one of the most beautiful things in this world. That is what Donald Trump and this mentality that he basically capitalized on has threatened for a very long time. Like I said, I'm going to do a whole different video on collectivism versus individualism because I think something is really, really curious about it. And please let me know what you think in the comments. Do your own sort of little research and see what you kind of find and what realities from your own life you draw to it from it. But people are waking up. People are waking up, and I feel like conservatives, they can get back to those days of George W. Bush, Ronald Reagan, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln. Again, not saying those guys were perfect, but at least they could have a conversation of their day and listen to other perspectives and find some sort of peaceful, amicable compromise. I think many Republicans who supported Donald Trump are waking up to that. And so, yeah. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I hope that you like this video. I will see you guys in the next one. Have a great day and stay safe out there. Also, lastly, please do remember to go ahead and like this video, subscribe, click the bell so you know whenever I post a video, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, bye-bye.